me start recording first, and then I'll think about how I actually do this. So, it's welcome to the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast. Is that the right voice?
Yeah,
that works.
Does that work? Is that too cheesy for you?
No, I think
this podcast should try to be as cheesy as possible. It takes itself too seriously.
It takes itself too seriously. Okay. All right. So we should go just full-on chintziness with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Welcome to the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast, dudes! I'm your host, BlueHighwind, and joining me tonight is...
This is Catuse.
Wait, have we started?
We actually, I think we've started now.
Yes, we started the podcast episode.
Yeah, now we've started.
All right. Sup, team? This is Joe, a.k.a. Technobliterator, and I'm not paying attention very well because I didn't realize we'd actually begun.
I didn't think we had started either. I thought we were doing a bit, like a pre-bit, but no. Now the bit is just the thing. This is the thing. All right. We are the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast. We're the official podcast of the Final Fantasy Wiki, which is the greatest compendium of Final Fantasy knowledge on the entire internet, and probably the world, I think. I don't know. Anyway, we're at finalfantasy.fandom.com, correct?
Yes, we are. We are at finalfantasy.fandom.com.
Yes.
We are not at fantasyfootball.com.
No, this is not the fantasy football podcast. Or the fantasy football wiki. No, we don't deal with any of that shit. That is pure toxic. Even though, at this point, it does appear that I am going to make playoffs in my league.
That's good.
I just need to win one of my next two games. One of which is against the dude who is 12th in the league, lowest scoring points, and has lost about 10 games in a row. So I should be able to win that one. And then fall ass backwards into the playoffs. We should not be talking about we should not be talking about football because it's a source of great sadness in my life. I'm a Broncos
No, we should
fan.
talk about real football because England won 3-0 and USA won 1-0. So both my teams won.
Well, congratulations. I'm happy for America. Because I still have some lingering love for this country, and England could screw off.
That's totally fair. But I'm still happy when we actually, we've never done well in the World Cup in my lifetime, so I'm not expecting us to now. But I'll take a win where I can get it.
Wait, you guys have never made it to the elimination stage before in your lifetime?
We always make it through then, and then we always lose on the quarterfinals or the semifinals or something like that. Like the Euros last year was the closest they've ever got to winning in my lifetime.
Oh yeah. That was the whole "It's coming home, it's coming home,
coming home, it's coming, football's coming home." That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, that I. You know what? Here's a confession. I don't care about soccer. Like I
mean, given that you just called it soccer, that tells me all I need to know.
Look, when I played it, it was called soccer. My team won the Bayonne, New Jersey championship one year. So I'm a champion soccer player. Not a professional champion soccer player, but I am a champion. I played left defense. I don't even remember what the position was called. Mostly I just kicked the ball away when it came my way. But I was essential for the team to win. Anyway, my point is that I just find soccer too low scoring. And it just kind of, I wish more things would happen during the game. It feels like it's 2 hours of a ball going back and forth and then 3 seconds of something happening, which you could easily miss if you go to get a beer.
But the flip side is basketball, where it scores a lot, right? The flip side is,
that's a sport with far too much happening.
Right.
But the thing with basketball is sometimes it's exciting when they don't score.
Oh yeah.
The moments that they don't score are what actually build up the narrative of a basketball game. Where in soccer, it's the rare times. You know, really, we should all just be watching NFL or baseball, which I think has the perfect amount of scoring in both of those things.
So the thing about baseball is that you spend so much of the time. You go to the baseball game, right? And you win a T-shirt from the T-shirt can, and you eat your like hot dogs or whatever. Most of the time, nothing is happening because you're just waiting for them to finish taking you out to the ball game.
Cricket's the same way.
Yeah, no, this is the
same thing in cricket.
Is that people in the Commonwealth look down on Americans because they think incorrectly that we're too stupid to understand that baseball is boring. But then we go to the Commonwealth and we look at them and they're like, man, those guys are so stupid because they don't understand how boring cricket is.
Right?
All right. The truth about baseball is that baseball is an excuse to sit outside and drink a beer and chill with your buddies in the stands.
Yeah,
and then
exactly
rarely something will happen on the field. It is not actively entertainment in of itself, except for very rare situations. Where football actually can be a source of entertainment in of itself, unless, of course, you happen to be a Broncos fan, in which case you have been watching the worst season of professional sports, possibly in the history of the entire organization of sports, going back to the ancient Greeks.
Okay. How many minutes have we spent not talking about Final Fantasy?
6.
Okay. All right. I'll take pride in that because that was totally my fault.
You know, I mean, so if you are listening, you would remember that last month I fucked everything up because I don't know a better way of converting an MLK file. And, yeah. So anyway, we have to go and do the news from October over again because none of that is recorded. And, yeah, that was all my fault. Converting files in VLC is actually a very easy process unless you screw around with it like I did. So don't screw around with it. Actually, what I'm going to do is what I should have been doing all this time, which is have 2 copies of the original recording and only convert one of them and then just delete the other one once everything's all done. So that's what a organized, intelligent person does. Versus me, a blathering fool whose method of creating content is roughly akin to slamming his head against the wall and then going and cutting the wall out and presenting it as a piece of art.
Relatable.
Yeah, you know. So anyway, we should do the October news. And this is going to be old and dusty. It's not going to be breaking because some of this stuff is like 3 months old at this point, practically. But do you remember Google Stadia?
Do I remember this Google Stadia?
Google Stadia, yes.
Briefly, yes, I
I remember thinking that it was cool like 5 years ago, whatever it was, and then it just kind of blew over.
Yeah, it's like it would have been fine if it didn't have an absolute garbage monetization, like the business model, I should say.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, you know, oh, you have to pay full money for a game that you don't technically own. So if the service goes down, which, lo and behold, the service is going down, then, you know, you lose your game. And they ended up refunding everyone who lost their game. But even still, it's like, you know, that's bullshit. Like, if you're going to do a streaming service, you have to go for, like, a Netflix model. Or, like, you have to go for one of those models. I'll say, just, it ain't gonna work. Like, if you get the business model wrong, and people aren't gonna buy in when people already have, you know, issues with latency, and, like, there's all sorts of things can go wrong with video game streaming. And with Stadia, all of those things went wrong. And because it's Google, and we know what Google do, it's like the whole company has ADHD. Like, they will spend like, you know, 5 minutes on something and then be like, we don't care about this anymore, and then ditch it, right? And then the product will fail because they didn't spend that much effort on it, and it will just be thrown on the graveyard of all the products that Google has created and killed over the years.
Yeah, do you remember Google Plus?
Yes, I do remember Google Plus.
I remember that it existed. I don't remember anyone using it.
Well, no, everyone had to use it because all of your YouTube accounts were forced into Google Plus.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, actually, at this point, because of all the various Google products I've used during the course of my life, I have like 4 Google accounts, which I have to like cycle through.
Yeah, that's the experience as well.
Yeah. At some point,
Also, like,
I would love to consolidate things that my Blogspot account that I still use. I'm the last person on earth with one, probably. One day Google will just shut it all down. I should probably be prepared for that. But I would love to cycle it so it's on my main email, but that I can't do for a number of... it's pointlessly complicated. We're getting off track, which is Google Stadia was a complete catastrophic failure. Lots of people predict that was going to be the case. As it turns out, don't hire Phil Harrison to do anything, because it will all be a disaster. But this matters to us here in the Final Fantasy world, because some Final Fantasy games did come out on Stadia. Most notably being Final Fantasy XV, which had a few small extra bits that were Stadia exclusive. But they're like so minor, it's like one mini game and a couple items that I don't think anyone's ever going to care that they're lost to history forever.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know how much of it is relevant, but like, literally, like, I don't know how many people cared about a Stadia version of FF15. The only time I've known people care about a Stadia version of anything is when Cyberpunk 2077 like was a garbage on every single platform, but it was best on Stadia. That's the only time I've ever known anyone care about it. So I doubt anyone even knew that Final Fantasy 15 had a Stadia version.
Somebody must have bought it. Microsoft paid
Someone out
Square
there
Enix.
probably did.
Microsoft did probably pay Square Enix a very large amount of money to release that game on Stadia. That's a story I've been hearing.
Microsoft?
Yes. No, sorry, Google. My mistake. That would be weird. Microsoft.
Yeah, it would be weird if Microsoft paid them to appear on, like, even on their own platform. You know, like, they would want to do that anyway.
I'm sure Microsoft would pay Square Enix a lot of money to get Final Fantasy XVI on there. That deal is probably something they have tried to do, and they got a better deal from Sony. Anyway, so basically, if you own Final Fantasy 15 on Stadia, your money will be refunded to you, and the game will cease to exist forever in the middle of January sometime.
Yeah, so all the exclusive content will also cease to exist.
That exclusive content being... you know what? I don't even care what it was.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that are ending, do you remember a little game called Final Fantasy VII: The First Soldier?
Ha 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 ha. Yeah, the game that just fucking died.
Yeah. That was another one where we saw it coming a mile off, because I said when it was announced, I'm like, I don't see what the target market for this is. Like, there's like the Venn diagram of people who are Battle Royale fans and people who are Final Fantasy fans. There's so little in there that I don't understand. I don't think it was a good business decision.
The target audience is this. The target audience is that some Square Enix executive was like, you know, he did like a big ass line of Coke or something, and then he was like, you know what? You know what made a lot of money? Fortnite. So we're gonna make Fortnite, but we're gonna put Final Fantasy VII in because everyone loves Sephiroth.
But Sephiroth's not in the game.
Okay, but everyone loves Final Fantasy VII, right? So we can make a ton of money making Fortnite, but making it Final Fantasy VII, and then putting it on mobile for some reason.
Mobile
Yeah, that's
exclusive.
the thing.
And then once we're done with that,
exclusive.
What's that?
Why? It makes no sense. But
Well, because I'm telling you, some executive was like, you know what makes a lot of money? Mobile games. You know what makes a lot of money? Final Fantasy VII. You know what makes a lot of money? It's Fortnite. we're going to make a Fortnite Final Fantasy VII mobile game and make infinite money off of it. And then not think about if this works at all.
Yeah.
And then it was like, you know what we're going to do next? We're going to make NFTs because NFTs also make infinite money.
We'll get to the NFTs. That's another news story from last month. Don't worry. This is all coming together. Yeah, I imagine somewhere in this boardroom meeting with lots of cocaine, there was somebody who actually could run the numbers and ran X being the cost of releasing this on, say, the Switch or the PlayStation, all that work, and then Y being the expected amount of additional revenue, and clearly X was greater than Y. Or so insignificant that it wasn't worth the overall investment, so it just never really came together, which, if that calculation had happened, is probably a good calculation to tell you not to make the game in the first place. But,
Right.
you know, lots of these random mobile games will be ridiculously popular somewhere for somebody. I'm not really sure who these people are that are playing these things, like Final Fantasy 15, A New Empire, or whatever the hell that thing's called.
I don't know anyone who's playing that, but I know plenty of people, including myself, playing the Dissidia mobile spin-off, right?
Yeah.
And I know there are communities that play that one Tactics mobile game that wasn't nearly as good as Tactics.
Tactics.
Brave.
No, not Final Fantasy
no,
Tactics
Brave.
S. I know it. Brave Exvius?
Brave Exvius War of the Lions. I know there are people that play it.
No, it's not War of the Lions. That's
War
Final
of the
Fantasy.
Visions.
War of the Visions. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's the one. Yeah, War of the Visions. That's the one. Yeah.
War of the Lions is Final Fantasy
I know
Tactics
those-
PSP.
Yeah, those have communities, but they're making money basically. And First Soldier wasn't. Like it had a decent-ish launch when it came out, and then it died like almost immediately after that, and they just were never able to recover it.
Yeah, that's a shame. I played it once. I did go over this on an earlier episode of the podcast where I lasted about 45 seconds roughly. I killed one guy, then someone else killed me. And I have really no interest whatsoever in these kinds of games. So I can't give an intelligent or objective review of how good this was at this kind of thing, other than it is just something I don't want or have any interest in.
Yeah, I honestly, same with me. Like, it was never a game for me, so I don't have an opinion either way.
Yeah, it will completely shut down on January 11th, 2023. And I think they are going to continue whatever their last remaining, I think they have like one last season they're going to get through of stuff. But that's basically it. Like they're gonna keep maintaining it, then the lights turn off, and that's the end of that story. We never actually did find out who the first soldier was. And wasn't it Sephiroth, by the way? Isn't Sephiroth the first soldier?
Don't know actually.
Or Angeal or Genesis? It's got to be one of those three dudes, right?
It's not gonna. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those three, but I don't like. I think it's more likely to be Genesis than it is the other three, because A, it's in the name, and B,
yes.
there was the whole thing about, I'm degrading because, I was a failed experiment, that kind of shit. Which would suggest to me that it was Genesis first, but not 100% on that.
Genesis does what Sephiroth don't.
Yeah.
There was a joke there. I didn't quite land it, but yeah. All right, so let me think. There was a Kingdom Hearts animated pilot that got released. Like, this is something that was planned in 2003. It was scrapped. Some animatics of it came out. I'm just kind of like zooming through this because we don't really have time to go through all this stuff in detail. Let's skip that news. That news not interesting. Here's an interesting one. On October 3rd, Fandom. You've heard of this website, right?
Never heard of it.
Yeah,
Nope.
Fandom.com. this company, Fandom.com.llc. I don't actually know what their official legal title is. They have acquired GameSpot, GameFAQs, Giant Bomb, Metacritic, and more. This was the announcement.
So I used to feel dirty every time I cited an interview on Fandom.com. So like there are, Fandom.com has its own little editorial, which is a lot smaller than it used to be. But one of their editorials was like it was an interview with Britt Barron and Cody Christian, which I'm so jealous of the people who got to interview them.
Wait, who are those guys? Sorry.
Cody Christian is Cloud's voice actor. He voices him in 7 Remake and Crisis Core Reunion. And Britt Barron, same with Tifa.
I don't know the new voices' names at all. Thank you, by the way.
Okay. So they interviewed them, and I used to cite that article, and it used to feel self-congratulatory because I was citing our own website. And now, like all these websites that we've cited for years, we're like doing self-congratulation all over the place. So. So that's the only thing that's like changed as far as we're concerned for the time being.
Well, I'll speak for myself here when I consider technically the only website that is our website is Final Fantasy Wiki. The greater Fandom.com website belongs to somebody else. I should also mention that I think, Techno, you were an official employee there, right?
Yes, I was. Okay. For about a year, and then I couldn't because of my visa.
Okay, and I was, basically an employee for like 2 years. I wrote for them.
Yeah.
Not particularly successfully either at this point. I don't know if anyone's going to be listening or would care at the NDA thing. They ran multiple programs trying to run their editorial thing and launch. Kind of a
they never really had a vision for it. So
basically, a clickbait farm is really what their vision was, which even back then was like 7 years ago now, was hopelessly outdated because at that point media had kind of moved towards a more personality-driven blogging kind of thing.
Well, not so much media, but also like search algorithms, Google have basically figured out, everyone's just doing the BuzzFeed thing, so we're going to de-rank you when you do that.
Yeah, you basically have to be Screen Rant in order to even continue being successful at it. And even then, I'm mostly embarrassed for Screen Rant half the time I see their articles. It's like, Andy Serkis is on... this is one of the worst ones. Andy Serkis is on Andor. Does that mean his character is actually Snoke? Like, dude, no.
Jesus Christ. Oh my god.
No. So anyway, Fandom has tried multiple things to try to launch their editorial side of things using the wiki money. What was the other company they bought a few years ago? They had like...
No, so they bought Screen Junkies.
Screen Junkies, thank you.
So what I'm saying is... They basically figured out we can't carve out our own identity, so let's buy someone else that already has one, and they can do it for us. That's what they did.
Yeah, and Giant Bomb has an enormous identity and also is a wiki website in of itself. I think their wiki is mostly just like a compendium of every single video game that's been released. I haven't actually used the Giant Bomb wiki very much, and I largely fell off of them this year when Jeff Gerstmann left. So I'll follow him to the end of the earth. As it turns out, the rest of Giant Bomb I could take or leave. Sorry, you guys. There's great personalities there, but Jeff Gerstmann is the dude. He has such an incredible knowledge of video games and history, and I think he's just brilliant. And I mostly just rip him off half the time on this podcast. A lot of these thoughts are basically just his. Confession. There we are. That's a large acquisition, and I don't know what that's going to mean for us or them.
It came after recently they sold D&D Beyond for a lot of money, and I'm guessing they used that money to buy this. But
they own D&D Beyond?
They used to own D&D Beyond, and then it was bought back by Wizards of the Coast.
God, it's so many. It's so weird. Just all
I know,
the
right?
weird crap that's involved, like all the vast tendrils that go around, and it's just like all we want to do is write about fucking Sephiroth.
Right?
And it's like it has to be also this vast, bizarre capitalist enterprise run semi-intelligently sometimes.
Yeah, that's that's Silicon Valley for you.
Yeah, I mean,
it feels
they are
like
based
they
in
don't-
San Francisco, not Silicon Valley. But
Yeah.
Oh,
being
whatever.
pedantic.
Close
you know.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Fandom is like a startup in that it doesn't know what its own business model is. Close to 2 decades after being founded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Its business model is that it gets excited teenagers who love media properties to write about those media properties. Then it makes money off of them with ad sales. And then it could just go and farm rent on those ad sales for the rest of the time. That's all it needs to do. And instead, it's like, no, we have to be this big, giant multimedia enterprise. And it's like, well, you don't really need to be. What you have is successful and sustainable.
Well, basically, like, the ads model is not, like, on its own is not all that sustainable. So they needed to diversify their sources of revenue. One, so they can reduce the number of ads on our site, which would be wonderful.
Oh, I
And
hate
two,
that.
because obviously, like, ads are just not, like, you can't just be entirely dependent on ad revenue, right? So basically, that's why they're branching off into different avenues, and whether or not that will be successful and it will work out for them, I hope it will. I would love to be coming to you in a few years and saying, hey, they solved the ad problem. Our website is now better than ever. But they've had a lot of misses, a few hits. So we'll see. We'll see if they have a handle on this thing and they can make our experience better. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, best of luck for everybody involved there. Giant Bomb, in particular, has had a shitty couple of years of getting thrown from one owner to another. That Red Ventures company that owned them sure didn't seem to have even the goddamn slightest clue why they had bought the thing. I remember when that sale went through, I was checking the Red Ventures websites that they owned, and I'm like, this does not make any sense. How do any of these websites make enough money for one, them to buy a large media company, and two, what are they doing even doing this? And I predicted that it was not going to work out, and it did not. But I think Fandom has enough money that as long as they don't start screwing around with everything, it could all work out perfectly fine for everybody.
Yeah.
Just don't try to consolidate all these things, because that doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, it's difficult because, there's so many different... When you look at Fandom, there's, the wikis. There's so many different stakeholders. We're one stakeholder. We're the editors, We're the guys actually writing the website. Another stakeholder is the actual readers. That, and they have totally different needs. Then there's all the different business stakeholders of the company. And, they all have totally different needs, right? Because the reader doesn't want ads, but we want, features developed, people to give us support every now and then, and to not suck at making those features, and that costs money. And the business needs to make money. So now it's like, okay, well, we can put this amount of ads on so that we can provide you all the development resources that you need, but now the readers have a shit ton of ads in their face. So that's why, it's like when you get into it and when you understand it on the inside, you're like, oh shit, I can see why this is so difficult. But on the outside, looking in, you're like, what the fuck is going on with this company?
All of this is some suit who's freaking out because some teenager is slightly changed the formatting of the front article of some wiki, and now the SEO is down, and he's not making as much money, so he's like freaking out.
Yep, that happens all the time.
Oh, I hate everything. All I want, I want a world where people are excited about the stupid shit they're excited about. They could write about it, and other people could read about it, and all the other crap that comes with it. All that stuff could go into a fucking volcano at this point. I've kind of hit my limit with tech capitalism at this point. I have no belief in any of it anymore. But we'll get to that. Catuse, do you have any other thoughts on this?
No, Fandom is kind of ass as a company, and has been ass for as long as I've been here. So I don't really have any deep thoughts about that.
I have a specific adjective in mind for that company, but I'm not going to say what it is. But I am still annoyed that certain people were fired from there that I am friends with. But anyway, so I think that was everything for October. Oh, one more news story from October. There was a Final Fantasy XVI trailer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It happened.
Looks like Final Fantasy 16, more of it.
But see, the fact that we didn't even remember that until the very end probably tells you how much impact that trailer had or didn't have.
Well, I don't have it on my list of news stories, which I didn't have last time, if you recall.
I do recall that.
Yeah, so I had to I think we were starting our main topic, and I'm like, oh shit, I forgot the most important friggin' thing. So that's why I didn't mention it immediately. But yeah, there's a new trailer. It's got, it shows us a lot of characters. There's a lot of boys screaming, and there's a lot of politics.
Yeah.
That's what Final Fantasy 16 is going to be.
I feel like the trailer won't really change anyone's mind. You know, if you're extremely excited for the game, you're going to remain really excited for it. With the possible caveat that I've seen some people asking for more gameplay footage, which makes sense.
Yes.
If you're not excited for the game, then it's not going to change your mind at this point. But
I think we've hit the point with. Sorry.
Yeah,
should I finish, or do you want to go?
I'll just make my point because it's real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just say that I encourage everyone to still maintain as open a mind as possible with this game. I'm ambivalent on it, but I'm open to the fact, it could come out and it could be one of the best in the series ever. Or it could come out and I might really, really like it. There are pieces of entertainment that came out that, I wasn't super thrilled about until they actually came out. I was like, oh, okay, this was amazing. The Batman from this year. I thought, oh my god, it's just going to be another gritty, grimdark film, and that's not the kind of Batman I like. But I watched it, and it was, it was the closest I've seen to a film adaptation of, Batman the Animated Series. So I'm like, oh, okay, this was really good.
Well, there is a film adaptation of Batman the Animated Series. It's called Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, but I was
go on.
Yeah, I was like, I expected it to be the Batman I don't like, and it was the one I did. So, maybe 16 will be like that. We'll see.
Okay. What I was going to say is I think Final Fantasy 16 has hit the point where we don't need trailers anymore, because we already know what the game is, vaguely. Right. I think what we need is a large vertical slice of things. So give us 5 minutes of continuous something or other. Really, really what we need is the gameplay action at this point, because that's what's going to make or break the game.
Right.
There are a few controversies floating around, which we've already covered, like the fact there's basically not going to be a party. You're only going to be playing as Jack? No. Who's the main guy?
Jack.
No, wait, Jack is the chaos guy. Clive, right?
Clive.
Cleve?
Yes, he's called Clive. I've heard people pronounce him Cleve, but his name is Clive because it's an English name.
Is it said Cleve in England?
No, it is said Clive.
Okay.
It's just I've seen people pronounce it Cleve. I'm like,
No.
That's
No,
not it.
Cleve is the character you write for like your OC, for your like the Final Fantasy 16 you draw on the back of your notebook during math class. His name is Cleve Warstrife, and he's got 3 swords, and you know he's super cool, and he's got sunglasses, and he's got a cursed arm, and he can fly, and he hates his mom.
Yep, and he joined forces with Cloud to fight Sephiroth.
Yes.
In the sequel, where Sephiroth comes back just so the OC can fight him.
Yes.
And then possibly your dreams, dude.
And then Cleve and Cloud make out. And you draw this, and then your mom walks in, and you frantically flip the page to something else. What were you doing? Nothing. And that's what being a high school Final Fantasy fan is like. What the hell were we talking about?
We were talking about Final Fantasy 16 and how the thing that we don't need is more trailers, which
yeah. All right, so vertical slice. There's really not going to be a party. So basically, all I want to see is how well does dodge rolling and punishing enemies work. Because I just played Bayonetta 3. Yes. That's a lot of fun. If Final Fantasy 16 is that much fun, it's going to be great, and hopefully it has a better ending because Bayonetta 3's ending sucks. Techno, though.
Hello.
Yes. Do you recall in Final Fantasy 16 a year ago, I think like the reveal trailer, we had a discussion about the racial diversity of the game?
Yes, I do.
Yes. Well, anyway, this had a small blow up on the currently moribund platform called Twitter, where people started getting upset over something that one of the developers, I think Yoshida, said about why everyone looks to us to be a white person. Though, as I've mentioned at the time, a lot of what we perceive as white would be for the Japanese audience to be perceived as Japanese.
Right.
So it's kind of a complicated situation.
Important
there.
caveat.
Yeah, so Kotaku got on this, and they wrote an editorial where they're not particularly a fan of how non-racially diverse the game is, and it's sort of a sticky situation, and you know, it's kind of the opposite of the controversies that have been happening with, you know, certain people getting really pissed off that there's black people in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, or in the Final Fantasy context, people being mad that Tifa now wears a sports bra.
That's a different controversy entirely.
Well, it's the same kind of groups of people who people who care about this subject care about that one. I guess that's why my mind went there.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Now, as a longtime Final Fantasy XIV player, I know that Yoshi has a long history of saying stupid shit that gets taken out of context and like super blown up. So I kind of just didn't even really bat an eye at this whole thing, but maybe that's just me being dumb.
This is not making or breaking the game for me.
Can we, before we discuss it further, I think we should say what the actual quote is and then bring up the context for it, just in case people are missing it.
Yeah, all right.
Because I believe the quote was something along the lines of...
I'll find.
This is set in his quote was along the lines of, "This was in medieval Europe. Like we're doing a medieval Europe setting, and medieval Europe did not have diversity." Okay.
The world of this game is Valistea. So quote here: Valistea was never going to realistically be as diverse as, say, a modern day Earth or even a Final Fantasy XIV. Ultimately, we felt that while incorporating ethnic diversity into Valistea was important, an over-incorporation into the single corner of a much larger world can end up causing a violation of those narrative boundaries which we originally set for ourselves.
Right.
And he continues, "The story we are telling is fantasy, yes, but it is also rooted in reality." I'm sorry, I'm not getting the quote entirely perfect because I'm getting it off the Kotaku article.
Yeah,
maybe I can find the IGN thing. No, they're
Is
kind of
it-
like they're cutting up the Q&A, so I should probably find the exact.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's probably I think if it weren't for like the last part of the quote, like I think that's the part of the quote that rubbed people the wrong way. Like,
Okay, all
'cause
right. I could give you the actual thing. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, this is a difficult question, but not one that was unexpected, seeing as diversity in entertainment media has become a much discussed topic as of late. The answer I have, however, may end up being disappointing to some depending on individual expectations. Our design concept from the earliest stages of development has always heavily featured medieval Europe, including historical, cultural, political, and anthropological standards that were prevalent at the time. When deciding on the setting that was best suited for the story we wanted to tell, the story of a land beset by the Blight, we felt that rather than create something on a global scale, it was necessary to limit the scope to a single landmass, one geographically and culturally isolated from the rest of the world in an age without airplanes, television, or telephones. Due to the underlying geographical, technological, and geopolitical constraints of the setting, Ballstate was never going to be realistically as diverse as, say, a modern-day Earth or even a Final Fantasy XIV that's an entire planet and moon worth of nations, races, and cultures of exposure. Blah, 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 blah. Conversely, this goes on for quite some time. Basically, the story they want to tell is set in medieval Europe, which means it's going to be largely ethnically one thing, which will immediately get a call back from everybody, including me, which is that medieval Europe was not ethnically
Monogenous. Sorry,
Not-
homogenous.
homogenous. Thank you. Not monogamous.
Well, it is quite
Homogeneous.
monogamous because
Yes,
you know,
certain parts
polygamy
were,
wasn't that big back then.
people fucked around in medieval Europe.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't think
everything did.
think medieval Europe had an overdose of monogamy. But moving on.
Yeah,
Okay. That's
all right.
fair.
It was not as chaste as fiction would want you to believe. It was not as white as certain groups would want you to believe. There's deep, intense, brutal politics here. I would say that they probably made the wrong call in going with this particular decision to have it largely be a light-skinned world. Because at this point, my answer for all the people who get upset about Lord of the Rings having black people in it or Asian people in it or anything like that is that all of these fantasy works, be them fantasy, sci-fi, whatever, they are reflections off of a desired reality which we have now.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
the reality that is desired by the majority of people, no matter what you want to believe, and I know that people who are extremely shitty do not want to hear this, but the reality is that people like seeing diverse stories with lots of different types of people because that is the general everyday reality of most people on this planet. Except
Well,
for...
let me elaborate on that a little bit. So, I live in San Antonio, right?
Yes.
This is a majority Hispanic city, you know. And before that, I lived in Birmingham, which is one of the few considered majority minority cities in the whole of England. So it's mostly it's a very large.
Sorry, Birmingham, England, not Birmingham, Alabama, which is an
Yeah, that's
extremely-
right.
Birmingham, Alabama
That's
is an
right.
extremely black city. It has a very large black population.
Right,
in
that's
the United
right.
States, yeah.
That's right. And so Birmingham, UK isn't like there is a black population in it, but it's actually the largest minority there is probably Muslim. So to me, like my experience growing up in these environments was always very ethnically diverse. So when I'd see something like Final Fantasy, that just looks weird to me. You know, like when I see media or fiction where everyone looks white, that is weird to me because that's not my experience at all. And for most people, you know, in backgrounds like that, yeah, that is not at all reflective of their experience. On the flip side, you know, you go to like rural towns from England, like you go outside of Birmingham, London, those kinds of places, and it's very white. So I can understand, at the very least, a lot of people from those experiences being like, hey, that's not right. That's not, you know, that's not how the world looks. But it's like, no, like basically everywhere else you go, at least in the developed world, in the West, etc., you're gonna find a lot of diversity. So it does not make a lot of sense for our media to not reflect that. You know, like I think everyone deserves to have themselves be seen in these types of media, you know, because not even just from a stance of, oh, like these like locations geographically, these geographical locations happen to have a lot of diversity in them. No, like, you know, it'd be pretty great if someone from Liberia could see themselves in these games, as well as someone from Turkey, you know, like, but
Yeah, I will say Final Fantasy generally draws culturally, artistically from every single part of the world, and you can see
oh
it
yeah, it does. At least in terms of things like the architecture, in terms of things like the summons, great
Yeah.
example.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
they draw from all different types of mythology. You know, so like, as I've said many times, like, you know, Final Fantasy VI does not get a lot of credit for how, you know, how forward thinking it was with its female protagonists. Like, you have to remember, like, Lara Croft didn't even exist yet, and Lara Croft wasn't that, like, forward, you know. So to have these, like, extremely well developed, like, lead female characters was just, you know, it's like Final Fantasy was very ahead of its time in a lot of ways. So I think why people were upset with this was because they see it as like a regression in a way. You know, it seems to have really let them down, that this series that was always like quite forward thinking in this regard hasn't been of
Well,
late.
it depends on the game, really.
Okay,
Some games.
I found this on the web for the series. It was
What the
always
he-
like
wait,
quite
Techno,
forward
what is
thinking
going
in
on?
this regard. Hasn't been oddly.
Tech,
Oh, I'm
what
sorry.
is that? What the hell is
What the
that?
fuck?
Fucking Siri started listening to me randomly.
You have a male
No.
Siri?
I guess I never changed it. But
Okay,
whatever.
interesting.
Anyway, carry on.
All right. Well, I'm sorry for
Sorry about
assuming your Siri's gender. I guess I don't know. Anyway, so what I was saying, well back with Star Wars and that sort of thing, is that people get upset because, oh my God, there's black people in the Empire where in 1977 there wasn't. Though there's been 50 years of cultural shifts in Star
Right.
Wars. So what was the expected norm in 1977? And Star Wars was even behind the times then and would correct itself by Return of the Jedi just 6 years later. You can see a large shift in the diversity of the cast, even in those original movies.
I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, no. There's the X-wing pilots in Return of the Jedi is a diverse group.
Oh yeah. Of course. Yeah. I thought you were just talking about like the lead characters themselves. I'm like,
not
okay,
not
they
just
added
Lando,
what
but
else?
yeah, no. like,
Right.
By that point, the Rebel Alliance, like originally, it's all white dudes because, well, I don't even know if that was really a conscious decision in the original Star Wars, as much as they were filming in England and grabbed whatever actors they could, and basically, I guess the only ones available were white ones. I couldn't really speak to that. I'm getting wildly more and more off topic, and I feel like eventually one of us is going to fuck up in some enormous way. So we're not trying to offend anyone here. This is a difficult minefield, unfortunately, for both the developers and us who are on this podcast right now. So what I'm saying is that as times have changed, people expect and want a more diverse set of groups of people because that is generally the reality of life in the 21st century.
In most places you go. Yeah.
Yes. And this, by the way, where I grew up, Bayonne, New Jersey, literally I think like a dozen languages you could hear on the street just walking around. So pretty diverse place too. Anyway, I guess my final point is this was probably the wrong strategy to take with this game. Also, probably not a deal breaker. Like, you can get upset about it. It's just a thing that's going to be in the game. And ultimately, with a fiction, you can go and make the decision that you want to go and deal with racial issues in the story you want to tell. Or you can make a decision that's just something you don't want to deal with. And ultimately, I guess both are valid. because
Yeah.
maybe it's just not a topic that Final Fantasy is particularly all that terribly well equipped to deal with, because it is a story for teenagers, and
Yeah, they haven't really touched it on it before.
they've done racial prejudice in Final Fantasy 9 and 10. I think.
Oh
9,
yeah, they did. Yeah, oh yeah, they definitely did it in 10. That's true with the Guado and
Final
as an
Fantasy
example.
9, by the way, is probably the most diverse game of them all, even if it is ultimately a kind of fantastic diversity, because you'll be walking around and there'll just be a bunch of animal people everywhere.
Right. Oh no, 12.
Yes,
12
12
is kinda
too.
like that
12,
too.
yes. Again, a fantastic diversity, because you're walking around Rabanastre and there's bunny girls. And
Yeah, but even then, like, isn't there like one of the judges is brown?
yes, Judge
Okay.
Redis, the ex-judge.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Redis, who reminds me quite
yeah.
a bit of a character from Tactics Ogre, which will be a topic for later.
Yeah. So I guess like I think it's a fair criticism, but I would be inclined to agree. I don't think on its own it's a deal breaker, because like I've said before that I'm personally quite disappointed in the lack of representation in the last few, because I think it leads to more boring characters which I'm less interested in. But I have a very small sample size to go off of. 15, Stranger of Paradise, 16. That's only 3 games. It's a very small sample size.
And Stranger of Paradise had a very diverse cast, ultimately.
Yeah, but they sucked. Like, it had,
I guess diversity in of itself is not a positive.
Right.
Yeah.
They gave all the development to one single character. Like, but yeah, it's like, I find it disappointing, but I will acknowledge that the counter argument that I do have a small sample size is a fair counter argument. And yeah, I think it's disappointing. I don't think it's the end all be all.
Yeah, what is kind of disappointing is that there's so few Final Fantasy games that come out that basically you have like one mainline every 7 years now. And it's like, all right, if you're just going to have a dude that appears to be a white guy to my eyes, that's slightly less interesting than what you could be doing. But, I haven't played this game. I don't know what the story's going to be like. So,
right.
It's impossible to prejudge it based on the trailers. And, for all I know, come summer next year, I could be more angry than anyone is at this topic. I could be setting fire to my disc in the ways that it has offended me. But for right now, just haven't seen enough. All we can do is jump around this minefield and fuck up in some terrible way. And I apologize. I don't know what we might have done wrong, but I'm sure we must have done something. So...
Well, I think the people who are the types to be like, oh, how dare there be like black people in Star Wars. I think those people are pissed off at this.
Those people.
Yeah, those people are pissed off. But I don't give
the slightest. No, those people.
I don't give 2 fucks. Like,
those people, I automatically block off our Discord and don't. Yeah, no, I'm just asking.
Yeah,
questions.
my response to them.
Yeah,
my response to them is go cry about it. Like, get over yourselves. My response to any other group that we've on accident offended, I apologize, but I think we were pretty fair.
I think we did a fairly okay task of that.
I think we were fair on both sides of the argument.
Hopefully, we don't need to go through this again, because it's not fun. Anyway.
Yeah, hopefully, the Final Fantasy 17.
What?
Sorry. What I was saying is we've revisited this topic about 6,000 times, so I'd be a bit careful about saying it's not fun, because something is drawing us back to it.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good point.
But
all right.
But I think if Final Fantasy 17, and I hope Final Fantasy 17 has a female lead, because we've only had 2 and there are 15 games. That's kind of embarrassing. I hope if 17 has a much more diverse cast, then probably we won't revisit it again. We'll see.
Yeah, I think I might have screwed up the most after the topic was basically over. So, well done. We should move on to the next topic, which is, let me see. I think we're done with October now. There was some Stranger of the Rift expansion, but I don't think any of us have anything to say about that. And Final Fantasy XIV's new expansion thingy is coming out soonish, right? Is anyone...
New expansion thingy.
Like the decimal point, the 10th.
Oh,
so 14.
The patch. Yeah, so patch 4.2 came out. Let's see. So they're 4 months apart. 4.3 is coming out in January, so 4.2 came out in December, November, October, maybe late September? I don't recall exactly. Probably late September.
Yeah, so we probably covered it already, and I don't think any of us really have much to say about it. We'll talk about the 0.3 then in January, when that comes around.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like much bigness happened there. So we're in November now. Let's move on. Oh,
yep.
Wait. Yes, November. So first news article that came out is that Square Enix is... I think there was Square Enix earnings reports were happening. It might have been the end of a quarter or whatever. One report is that they are starting to refocus their strategy on the global market because, demographics are changing in Japan and there's less teenagers to sell to.
Specifically console gaming demographics.
Yes. The gamer has the support is primarily, yes, in the Japanese market, given its graying demographics, is the exact quote.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how much that changes because a lot of the reasons that the Japanese market was one of the reasons they were struggling so much is basically mobile games took off extremely well there because the Japanese are spending a lot of time commuting to work and being on their phones a lot. And they also they tend to have much smaller apartment spaces over there. So, population density is a lot larger. So that was one of the reasons console gaming was struggling.
They also have a large, better internet infrastructure in Japan than
that too. That's another one. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how the advent of working from home changes that, and
the advent and the automatic end of it, because all businesses have decided, you know what, no, you have to go back to the office.
Well, a lot of them have, and a lot of them are still doing hybrid models. Me and my girlfriend both are doing hybrid models. But
my company told us, fuck off, you have to come in here.
Okay, well, everyone's had a different experience with it. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if or how much that potentially changes it. But yeah, basically, they're shifting towards the global market, which for us doesn't mean a whole lot other than the fact that a lot of games that were originally Japanese exclusive games are probably not going to be Japanese exclusive. They're going to try and market them to the West as well.
What was the last Japanese exclusive Square Enix game?
I'm going blank.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to remember myself. Rage of Bahamut on the DS. I don't think that's even the right title of that game. What was that DS Bahamut game? Not Rage of Bahamut. That was an anime. Blood of Bahamut.
Let me sort the list of Square Enix games. Okay, so there's a bunch of
mobile games, probably. Yeah, let's discount mobile games because none of us really care about them. But a full-on console release was the last time it was a Japan exclusive game. PSP Type 0, maybe.
Okay, so if we're not counting shit that I've never heard of, so Dragon Quest Rivals 2019 was Japan only.
Oh yeah, Dragon Quest X. Yeah, Dragon Quest X might be the very last one because there was a new version of Dragon Quest X that's not an MMO. It's supposed to be a single player Dragon Quest X, and that's also not getting released outside of Japan. Am I still connected?
So
okay, all right, yeah.
You are. Yes, yeah. So we're gonna get fewer titles like that. Basically, that's all. I don't know if we're gonna get fewer of them, but the ones like basically instead of getting that, we're gonna get something that was deliberately marketed towards us. Really, like, I think that's all that changes.
I think the point I was going to make is that Square Enix, as a JRPG company goes, is probably the most successful of all of them in terms of marketing to a global market anyway. They are far better positioned than, say, I don't know, like Nippon Ichi. I'm trying to think of like how many, like, there really aren't that many like Japan only companies left even in that space. So many of them end up having to release everything all over the world anyway. And it's so much easier with Steam and stuff. It's not like you have to actually sell a physical disc and ship it across the ocean or anything like that. Really, like, region exclusive things basically don't really make any sense anymore. It almost never happens. It's a very rare thing. And when it is only released in one region, people find a way to ship it out anyway eventually.
Yeah, it's, the people like Asia.com or whatever.
Yeah, and VPNs are very inexpensive and very easy to use.
Yeah, so I don't think this is going to mean a major change. And anyway, this was an investor call, so they'll say whatever bullshit the investors wants to hear.
Right.
Speaking of bullshit that investors want to hear.
Oh God.
Yeah. Guess what? Symbiogenesis. Have you heard about this?
Surprisingly, it is not a Final Fantasy VII character.
No. No, yeah, I guess not. Alright, Symbiogenesis. When this was announced, do you remember, like, 10 years ago? Catuse, you might remember this better than Techno, because you're a bit older, but do you remember when, like, Square Enix would announce those countdowns? Or, like, would copyright a word, and people would start thinking, like, oh my god, it's Chrono Trigger 3. Oh my god, it's the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Square Enix's marketing strategy is just copyright a random word and then wait for idiots on the internet to just freak the fuck out.
I don't think it's even like a strategy as much as like there are people on the internet who will try to read the tea leaves on every random thing and hope that it's their dream project. So symbiogenesis was like a word they copywrote or something. And people were like, oh, it's Parasite Eve. It's back. It's like, no. Parasite Eve is probably never coming back. And I mean, maybe it'll get a remake because Square Enix loves doing those. But in terms of a new game, no. In terms of a game at all, no. Symbiogenesis is, quote, the first digital collectible art project designed from the ground up for Web3 fans.
So
in other words, it's an NFT, and it lives in the metaverse along with Snoop Dogg and his latest album.
Or something.
And Mark Zuckerberg, who owns like some stupid thing that only exists in the metaverse. Like, basically, Mark Zuckerberg invented MMOs and sold them and has real world money to buy houses in the MMO that he created, and he marketed it as the metaverse and wants you to be really excited about it, and no one is excited, and as a result, their stock price has tanked.
Yeah,
they're now worth less than Home Depot.
Yeah, they've lost like $1 trillion over their investment in the metaverse.
At least.
And also, all this blockchain NFT shit, like every month there's another crash. Like, I think when we originally were talking about this story, it looked bad. And now a month later, it is infinitely worse. But anyway, this thing, they announced like a trailer for it. I don't even really know if it's a game. We're probably never going to talk about it ever again until the moment it closes in a year. There is a tweet with a small trailer. It's like 30 seconds long, and it has music that I'm sorry to report actually slaps. I think it's a great theme. But
well, that's no matter what garbage Square Enix puts out, they have the best composers.
Yep.
They need to, well, until they get Toby Fox to do a Final Fantasy score, I'm not sure they have the best composers.
But... Okay, that's fair, but I think my point still stands.
Yeah,
you can't judge a Square Enix property by its music.
No, you cannot. Because Final Fantasy XIII, a game that I have many thoughts on, has some really good tracks. Yeah, so this whole thing is a wide cast of characters not symbiosis, all of which can be collected as digital art, an interactive story in a dedicated community. What dedicated community here? you can't just conjure one like that. You can't just say it as a dedicated community. There is no community. You just fucking announce the thing. No one knows what this thing is. Doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I take this almost as a victory because they're creating their own IP effectively for this NFT experiment, which is almost like a tacit surrender. Because imagine like this was some major part of the Final Fantasy VII remake project or Kingdom Hearts, all having to do with this NFT crap. Instead, they made this thing, which in a year could be shut down and forgotten about. And, did I say this in another podcast? It might even be the one that was lost, where I said that, like, this is just basic strategy for a company of just like, all right, we'll throw $1 million at this crap, and maybe we'll get $1 billion back, or maybe it's just $1 million we don't have anymore, whatever, we're a giant company. Right? I think that's all fair, right? Is there anything else to be said about symbiogenesis?
I already did a deep dive into NFTs a few episodes ago. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah.
It's stupid shit, and I'm baffled that people are still putting money into this after the FTX crash, but we can move on.
Yeah, It doesn't look like Square Enix put so much money into this crap that they're going out of money, going out of business, so that's good. Square Enix's fiscal report or something that came out. This Twinfinite reporting this. Basically, the overall story is that the net sales decreased 3.3% last year. Operating income decreased 10.6%. Net sales dropped 9.5%. Et cetera, et cetera. But Final Fantasy XIV is doing really, really good.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. That's like the biggest cash cow for the company at this point. Like, it used to be mobile games, and now I think 14 is doing the heavy lifting.
Yeah. So basically, like, I guess just like to summarize, the entire digital tech industry is in the middle of a decline, including video games, for a number of complicated reasons. Square Enix is just one of those things that's feeling a bit of it hurt with sales going down because, the pandemic's ending. But Final Fantasy XIV sure makes some fucking money. Pretty much that whole story. Now, Final Fantasy XVI again. Sorry, this is disorganized slightly, but there is an ad that clarified that Final Fantasy XVI is going to be PlayStation 5 exclusive for only 6 months. So come 2024, roughly, it should be available on other consoles, or at least will have the option to be available on other consoles.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a lot of friggin' stories to get through. There was a Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion launch trailer. Came out today.
We're going to talk about that
next month.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that next month. And I have a lot to say on it. So look forward to that.
Yeah, that's going to be our December topic. But
yep,
I have saved the best story of the last 2 months for last. Okay. Yuji Naka, former Square Enix employee, was arrested on charges of insider trading on November 17th.
Yeah, this is the guy who made Balan Wonderland.
Yes, this is the guy that made Balan Wonderland, the perplexing, let's say, platforming game that came out in 2021 and then subsequently left the company. Also the creator of one Sonic the Hedgehog and many other games with Sega. He was apparently what he did, along with another employee, Taisuke Sasaki, who I believe actually has worked on Final Fantasy games before. They bought 10,000 shares of this company, aiming because they knew that this company was going to be working on a smartphone title called Dragon Quest Tact, and then sold it. So they ended up making like 47.2 million yen, which I think adds up to something like $50,000. I didn't actually do the math. It's not a terribly large amount of money. I mean, it is a large amount of money for us normal people, but like in terms of insider trading accusations, it's not like millions were stolen.
Yeah, this is like weak sauce stuff.
It is kind of funny that, you know, the week that Sonic Frontiers, or like the month that Sonic Frontiers comes out, Sonic's creator is getting arrested.
Yeah, I was having a good chuckle about that one.
Yeah, what a... Balan Wonderworld, such a weird chapter in Square Enix history, and it only continues to get weirder and weirder. Yeah, Taisuke Sasaki, I should actually check who that guy actually specifically is. Did any of you play Balan Wonderworld?
No. I watched more of the footage of it than I care to admit.
Really, truly fascinating game. Yeah, I can't find much on this Sasaki gentleman besides this story. I've just been told that he did work on some Final Fantasy game. I don't really 100% remember what it was. It's not really terribly important, but you know. What a weird thing. Also, yeah. Dragon Quest Tact looks like ass. So.
What is this Dragon Quest Tact?
Yeah, it's a mobile game. Tact is a weird name for a game.
Okay, this is Square Enix we're talking about. They name games shit like Triangle Strategy.
Yeah, it's basic. You know what? It looks like all the Bravest except like Dragon Quest. That's what it looks like. It just looks like garbage.
And imagine this looks really bad.
It looks
imagine
awful.
going to jail because you stole $50,000 on the stock market for fucking Dragon Quest Tact.
Yeah, like look at the screenshots. It is just a mess of nonsense and figures and numbers. It looks like it doesn't even look all that much like all the Bravest. It kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy Mobius 2. Like just any one of these mobile games. It's like 9 billion numbers and figures because they have to have like 6 currencies and all this other crap. Just endless complexity. It's just a slot machine, all right? That's all it is. It's a pile of shit. This game never should have been made. You shouldn't steal money over it. Apparently, there's even a tactical battle element to it. On top of that, too.
Yeah, I see something that vaguely reminds me of like Radiant Historia, except Radiant Historia was actually fun, and I'm sure this game is not.
Yeah, you know, it's basically tactics because it's got a grid base so you can move things around, except they called it tact because probably the tactics level is so, you know, shallow and meaningless as to be not even relevant. It's a slot machine with a bunch of crap that you do. That's it. It's 10 o'clock at night. I have no tolerance for bullshit. Fuck your slot
I think
machines.
there's one final piece of news that's not really it's not a massive piece of news, but it's kind of funny. The whole Twitter thing.
Yeah. Sorry,
went down.
Yeah,
so the whole Twitter thing went down.
That's relevant to us because the Final Fantasy Wiki has an official Twitter, which
right,
I think some color mage mostly hosts that. But go on, Techno.
Formerly, yeah. The main thing is that there was this whole time when I think like about 75% of the staff or something were laid off, and there was a huge concern that a lot of the infrastructure staff weren't allowed in the building, and the World Cup was about to happen. So a lot of people feared that the website could crash at any moment given the lack of staff. And Square Enix tweeted out, "The end times are coming," and made a reference to Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn.
Oh, no, they were making a reference to Endwalker because Endwalker is about the final days, and they said...
Oh, it's to Endwalker? Oh, shit, okay.
Something about the final days.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but there was multiple moments over the last 2 weeks where basically the topic of Twitter was Twitter is dying. Everyone go and say your final tweet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I opened up their tweet and Twitter is like broken. Okay, whatever. Yeah. The final days were upon us, which is a quote from Emmett Selk at the climax of Shadowbringers.
Right. So that was the news. As far as how it impacts us, yes, we do have our own Twitter account. And yes, I think some color mage is kind of done with all of it just because of like what's going on, how unstable the platform is at the minute, and how it doesn't at this point appear to be getting better. So in the interim, I'm kind of like, okay, I still have the Twitter account. I'll still keep it running on fumes. Like, I do have like vague ideas for like how it could be run in a way that it could be a good marketing tool for us, but now is not a good time to invest in the platform because it's just so unstable. We just have no idea like what's gonna happen with it. I will say like to the people who think it's like it's gonna crash one day and then the site will immediately die, I don't think that's what's gonna happen. No, I think more likely if you look at every time a social media platform dies,
Yes.
it dies over time, and it's like a fading, gradual thing where people move away to another platform. So if that did happen to Twitter, first of all, I'd be shocked because there's so much content on there already, and like a lot of what already exists is so like valuable to people that I don't see it. Like I could see it like being used as like a historical archive at the very least, right?
Assuming
first
the
of all,
site survives enough. Like there's so much. There's so much Twitter every second of every day.
Right.
In all the years and years, it would be a very large investment to keep all that stored and saved. Assuming that it is
the web archive.
All that content is in of itself no longer profitable or accessible. Because I don't know what the licensing agreement is. Who owns your fucking tweets? That kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, like, if like the ideal world would be like Twitter would be not like just run by one single private company. It would be like, there was like there was one guy who had this idea about like making tweets like a protocol, kind of like a web like a web page almost, but I don't want to explain that whole thing, but basically the short of it is like I do not at this point believe that Twitter is a platform worth investing in until we know what's going to happen for sure. So yeah, so that's why we're at this point.
Yeah, I'm still tweeting like nothing's changed because I'm kind of fatalist about things, where I'll just keep doing what I'm doing until the day comes that I can no longer do what I'm doing. It's like,
yeah,
all right,
I think that's fair.
I've steadily seen the number of likes I get decline as more and more people who actively follow me, not just the numbers that say they follow me, have largely disappeared. And it's like, all right, whatever. I'll get one like on a tweet, and that's what it is.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Really, like our position as a community is we're gonna go wherever the Final Fantasy community goes and wherever Square Enix goes. And right now, as it stands, they are still mostly, for the large part, on Twitter. If that changes, we will change too. If Twitter does get better, if Elon Musk's ideas turn out to actually, if it turns out he actually has good ideas for it.
No, his ideas are terrible. It's not going to get better.
I'd be shocked if I'd be shocked. Basically, I think more likely what would happen to make the platform better is, someone else would buy it off of him, or I think something like that would happen. Like government would intervene.
No. I think the way that Twitter gets saved is that it turns into such a shit show so fast that Elon Musk is forced to sell it, and then it basically reverts to how it was before. Because basically his plan right now is like if a right-wing asshole were to buy Reddit and decide to make red pill a major part of his strategy. And it's like, no, dude, that's not profitable. You're out.
Right.
Just basic, like the basic math does not add up on your side in those sort of things. Bringing back fat people hate is not going to save your website. Like, this is the best comparison I have. It's like bringing back Donald Trump's Twitter account is not what's going to save Twitter. Also, you're a piece of shit. So, you know.
Right. It's like, you know, his businesses have, like, some of them have been successful, some of them have been total failures. And of the ones that have been successful, you know, they had a huge amount of government money behind them. So really, the only thing that would like save the platform at this point would probably be some sort of government intervention kind of thing. I don't know. But long story short, we will see what happens with it. And if it turns out that the platform does get saved or something like that, then, you know, I have ideas for what we could do. Maybe SCM would be back at that point. Who knows? Otherwise, until then, we're going to run the Twitter account on fumes until, you know, there's a more obvious new platform that we should be at.
Yeah, the most likely result is that it just becomes like our Facebook account. Or like, does anyone actively update the Facebook account?
No, we abandoned the Facebook account several years ago because nobody wants it to go on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. That's how a social network dies. It just becomes awful and toxic, and it's for your mom. And, you know, then you have to deprogram your parents from all the bullshit happening on their social network, and it's awful. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe... Do you remember last week when it seemed like everyone was jumping to Hive for like one day? And then that just seemed like it didn't happen? Like, there's real hunger for just basically Twitter, but without Elon Musk. So maybe that'll be the future. Somebody will just make, like, here, it's Twitter. We call it Twiter. Because it's just basically the same product, except Elon Musk is not on it. I don't know. Anyway, should we go to our quote-unquote main topic?
Yeah.
Okay. Marathon episode.
Whew, boy.
Marathon episode! We're going along. We're doing it live. Fight through it. Fight through the pain. Did I tell either one of you that I walked, I climbed a mountain on Saturday. So, this mountain is Mount Mitchell. It is the largest mountain east of the Mississippi in North America, or maybe just the United States. I don't remember which one. The climb is 4,000 feet up and down, and 6 miles there and back. So, yeah, I have a large pain tolerance, and I'll just keep fucking going. I can do it.
All right.
I can power through it. Yeah, let's just keep going. Let's just do it. Let's just do it. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Anyway.
You're doing some fucking Shia LaBeouf thing.
Oh god, I really don't want to do any Shia LaBeouf thing. I'd never liked Shia LaBeouf. I like Shia LaBeouf for I like Shia LaBeouf for 2 months when that movie Honey Boy came out, and then immediately he turned into like even a worse person. So
yeah, I never understood him, but well.
He also came out saying that movie, which is like, was marketed as being semi-autobiographical. He's like, no, it was all bullshit. I made it up. So, yeah, whatever, dude. So, Tactics Ogre. Have you heard of this video game?
I have, in fact, heard of this video game.
Yeah, so there's a new Tactics Ogre. This is now the 5th Tactics Ogre, because Tactics Ogre originally is a Super Nintendo game. It was then ported to the Sega Saturn, and then it was ported to the PlayStation 1, and then it was ported to the PlayStation Portable with the Let Us Cling Together remake, and finally, it has come once again to all the modern platforms with Tactics Ogre: Reborn, which was released this month. Now, Tactics Ogre, that's not a Final Fantasy game, right?
No, but it's basically just Final Fantasy Tactics before there was Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yes. So the backstory here is that there was a company called Quest, the Quest Corporation. Key people there being Yasumi Matsuno and Akihito Yoshida and some other people who would go on to be major people. This company made a number of games, most of which no one really particularly remembers anymore. I couldn't really tell you how good Musashi no Boken was on the Game Boy. I've never heard of it, except for reading about it right now. But one series they made that was very successful was Ogre Battle. There was Ogre Battle, the March of the Black Queen on the Super Nintendo, Ogre Battle 64 on the Nintendo 64, and of course, Tactics Ogre. Tactics Ogre was so successful that it ended up getting bought by a company called Square, who then took the Tactics Ogre team and told them, you know what, we really dig this thing called Tactics Ogre. Could you basically make the same game again for us, but put chocobos in it and write a slightly different story? And from there was created Final Fantasy Tactics. And from there comes other games like Final Fantasy XII. So long, elaborate backstory. But Tactics Ogre is extremely important in terms of Final Fantasy lore in that way, because this is where you get Ivalice and all the high politics and Game of Thrones.
And Ivalice is one of the most, it has been so influential on the franchise at this point. Even Final Fantasy 15 wanted to be Ivalice.
Yeah, and I would say that Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics together, though probably Final Fantasy Tactics more so, being more popular, is basically the Final Fantasy VII of the tactical RPG subgenre, where, especially in the last few years, this kind of game has suddenly exploded with popularity. It's kind of like 10 years ago, nobody was making Metroidvanias. Then all of a sudden, every indie developer decided they wanted to make a Metroidvania. So recently, the last couple of years, there've been a dozen or so Final Fantasy Tactics / Tactics Ogre clones that have come out. And Square Enix actually made their own Triangle Strategy, which was strongly inspired by this sort of thing. And of course, there was that crappy mobile game, Brave Exvius, War of the whatever the hell.
Yeah, Brave Exvius, War of the Visions. We finally got the name right.
Yeah, that's it.
It is, I will tell you, the game is very inspired by Tactics in terms of the art style, somewhat inspired in terms of the politics. I have played this game. I did not play it for very long. I do not think this is a good game. I don't think it's very successful at what it was trying to do.
Yeah, and also there was Unsung Story, the Kickstarter campaign that I gave $20 to 10 years ago because they said they knew Matsuno, and turns out no, they really didn't, and that game still has not come out. Maybe one day. I still get emails about it. It's the one Kickstarter I ever gave any money to, and that decision was enough to make me never want to do anything with Kickstarter ever again. Whew. So, have either one of you played Tactics Ogre before?
Played Ogre?
Anything Ogre.
I have not played Tactics Ogre.
Okay.
So I emulated, I want to say, the Super Nintendo version some years ago. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I have some vague thoughts.
Okay. I played the PlayStation Portable version when that remake came out, because when Final Fantasy Tactics came out, the PSP version, I loved the hell out of it, and there was a few years where I'm I'm going to play every tactical RPG. And I kind of went a bit overboard. I can tell you that Jeanne d'Arc on the PlayStation Portable is an incredible video game, and more people should play it. Anyway, so Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre, really great games. I played them both to completion. Techno, you said that you played Final Fantasy Tactics. How deep did you get?
Oh, God. I think it was I'm pretty sure I was halfway. all I remember was a fat motherfucker in the church that I
That's
had a
the
fight
end
with.
of chapter 2.
No, I got way past that. I for sure got way
fat
past
guy?
that. I met Agrias. How do you pronounce her name? Agrias.
It's never really been voiced, so we're not sure.
Okay. Well, I met her. I had Ramza gave his speech about if that's not foul, sir, pray tell what is. Like, I don't like I remember bits of it for sure,
Okay.
but
Yeah, Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics are similar games, but they are distinct ones in terms of structure, because Final Fantasy Tactics is a linear-ish game. Like, you can walk around the world map and things, but you do have to go chapter by chapter, so it's like Fire Emblem in that way, the modern Fire Emblems. So you have to go and continue one story, beginning to end. You have Ramza, you have all the things that happen, you don't really get decisions in that. Tactics Ogre is different in that it has several branching paths, though I think really only 2 major ones. There's Law and there's Chaos. So after the opening few battles, you get to a major decision in this world of, it's not Evilise, it's, what's it called? Damn it. What's the Tactics Ogre world called? It's been a while.
Valeria?
Valyria, yes, thank you. I think there are references to Valyria in Final Fantasy Tactics somewhere. So you get to this major decision point where, all right, so let me set up a bit more of the story. So there's this kingdom Valyria has broken up into pieces. It was directly inspired actually by the Balkan Wars of the 90s. There's 3 ethnic groups. There's the Wallisters, the Galgastani, and I can't remember the third one. The third one is less important at this point in the story. Mostly what's happening is the Wallisters and the Galgastani are at each other's throats and fighting, and there's bloody ethnic conflict. You're part of the Wallister group, and your sect, like your revolutionary group or whatever, they're trying to go and gather a large army, and you're told by your commander to massacre a fellow Wallister town. Kill everybody there. So that way they could blame it on the Galgastani and use it as a false flag operation to inspire, a larger war thing. So that's the kind of tone that this thing's going for, where you're basically being told to do a war crime, and if you follow through on the war crime, that's the lawful route. And if you betray them, that's the chaos route. So everyone follows here?
yeah.
Yeah. At the time, like early 90s, this is incredible stuff. Even in 2009, this is really groundbreaking. Like, even now, like, there aren't that many RPGs. Like, I can't imagine Final Fantasy XVI ever giving the player a moral choice to this level. Of, like, do the ends actually justify the means of your revolutionary whatever you're going for? Eventually, there is something like a neutral path, because eventually it all comes together where you end up fighting a big monster final boss one way or the other. But depending on your decisions, characters will betray your party, or they'll join up with your party. There ends up being something of a romantic love triangle. One of the tales of that love triangle being your sister, which is, there's a lot going on there. Your sister is madly in love with you, and I don't want to spoil things, but I think the way that story is handled is terrible. Especially,
this is the impression. This is kind of, I don't think I actually finished Tactics Ogre, and I think this kind of shit is why it took all the edginess of Final Fantasy. Okay, it took all the edginess of Final Fantasy Tactics and made it even more so.
Yes. Or basically, well, you're doing it the other way around. It's like Final Fantasy Tactics is
Final Fantasy Tactics is the light and fluffy version of Tactics Ogre.
Yes, and Final Fantasy Tactics is a game with, I'm just going to go out and say it, rape as a major plot point in it.
Yes. It
is a world. Final Fantasy Tactics is a world where every single major part of the society is proven to be utterly corrupt and depraved and trying to cause the apocalypse, most of them. And Tactics Ogre is even more grim and dark than that is. So, like, I guess Final Fantasy Tactics would be the PG-13. Tactics Ogre is a hard R. And Triangle Strategy, in comparison, is G. Good for the whole family. Also, I remember in my Final Fantasy Tactics walkthrough, I had a list of all the betrayals that happened in that game, and I think I ended up with like 50 of them or something by the end.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I will say, because Blue said that I hadn't, Blue pointed out the fact I haven't like finished Final Fantasy Tactics, and the reason is because I sucked at it. Like, you know, I will say I loved basically everything about the game, and you know, I think Fidem put this well in the Discord chat where he said like all the cool people like it, you know, as in like all the people like, you know, who kind of have a taste in Final Fantasy that's similar to mine, all really like this game, and I wanted to love it, but I just suck at it. Like I'm just bad at it, you know. Well, like I wish I was good at the game, because unfortunately I wasn't. But you know, we're mostly talking about story and aesthetics at this point, and at that point, yeah, you know, it's easy, like easy. You know, I love that.
Well, Techno, I hate to be the bearer of bad news on this thing, but Final Fantasy Tactics has a reverse difficulty curve, where the most difficult part of the game is the third chapter. Not the third chapter, the third battle. The first chapter is the most difficult part of the game. That is the steepest climb. And once you get past chapter 2, once you've defeated the evil bishop guy, who's the monster fat man with a giant mouth, who I believe you mentioned that you did fight. Once you get past that, the game...
Did I fight that?
I don't know. You said there was a fat man, and that's the only...
Yeah.
That is the only character in that game I could think of as being particularly large in body.
Cuchulainn something.
Yes, Cuchulainn is the demonic form of that character, whose name I couldn't tell you.
Cardinal Delacroix, because
yes, Cardinal Delacroix.
Games.
Yeah, so once you get past that, the game actually gets considerably easier, and by chapter 4, it is basically a breeze, because they start giving you really overpowered characters, like the Thunder God. And you're playing the PlayStation Portable version, Balthier, another one, from Final Fantasy XII. These are extremely overpowered characters, and you start unlocking the really strong abilities, like ninja with dual wielding, and samurai, and all that sort of stuff. So no matter how hard the game gets, like how high the levels get, they've given you characters with such overpowered abilities that you really don't need to think about it anymore, and it becomes trivial. Tactics Ogre does not do that. It is, at least in the PlayStation Portable version, a more consistently difficult game, but also, I'll tell you, a very unbalanced game in many ways. So the post-game is practically impossible due to some of the decisions they made, like the job system. You know how in Final Fantasy you have one level? Like, no matter what your job is, your level does not change. You have like a base stat total. In Tactics Ogre, that's not the case. So if you decide to shift from one job to another, your character goes back to level 1 and becomes practically unusable. Which also means that you're never going to change jobs. Which also means you're never going to unlock the late game jobs that you need in order for you to actually do the post-game crap. So I never got to do any of it. I bring that up because Tactics Ogre Reborn has wildly reshuffled all those things. The game is has been given a visual overhaul, has been given a systems overhaul, has been given a vast, like, just basically just the way it looks overhaul. Like, the menus are all entirely different. There's a new system where your characters can pick up cards off the battlefield, and then they'll get small stat boosts, which is kind of a small cheat. Returning from the PlayStation Portable version, there is a time rewind function where you can go and rewind back a turn whenever you really want to, which is just the greatest cheat you possibly can get, because then you can fiddle with the RNG and basically win every single battle no matter what you're doing, which I used heavily because at a certain point the game got really long and I just wanted to get through it. I did not play Tactics Ogre Reborn. I don't think any of you guys did.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, I couldn't really justify buying the video game again. If I want to play it again, I'll just dig it up off my PlayStation Portable, which is somewhere. It's in a box someplace. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Like, just truthfully, I don't think I'm ever going to play that game again. No matter... I do really like it. I think it's a great game, one of the greatest RPGs of all time. But playing the whole thing again is... It's a long-ass game, too. Easily over 40 hours. A lot of really cool systems going on, a lot of very interesting stuff. I think it's a great game. But anyway, I did have a question I wanted to ask. Are you all prepared for it?
Yeah.
Okay. Which game is better? Final Fantasy Tactics or Tactics Ogre? You have to go and make the decision now.
Oh, fuck. Well, I mean, I'm not nearly educated enough to make that decision.
Yeah, Techno, you're kind of...
Yeah.
You're kind of out of this, unfortunately.
Yeah. So it's just for Cat.
Well, you could go and name some other strategy RPG. I don't know, maybe you think Fire Emblem Three Houses.
XCOM.
XCOM.
Let's go with XCOM. That's the only other one I played.
Pokemon Conquest.
To make a not entirely confident claim that, because again, it's been like however many years since I played both of these games, but in particular Tactics Ogre. But I'm gonna claim that probably Final Fantasy Tactics is better, just because I found it more accessible. Like, I remember something really annoying about Tactics. So Final Fantasy Tactics has a serious issue with the fucking Dorter Trade City or whatever.
Yes, extremely hard, legendarily hard third chapter.
But I remember Tactics Ogre, like, consistently having bullshit like this, where, like, even at very low levels, you have, like, flying units and all of this other crap. The story is also, like, pretty inaccessible for just because of it's just extremely grimdark. And I think that it's okay if a tactical RPG is a bit inaccessible, but I think that Tactics Ogre crossed the line. And so for that reason, I'm going to have to give it to Final Fantasy Tactics, but very reluctantly making a choice between these two games.
One thing that's interesting about the PlayStation Portable version is that version is extremely biased towards archers. So, like, the best strategy for that game is to run a party with, like, 4 archers in it and take the high ground, and you can beat basically anything. There's even a character called the Thunder Maiden, Aracel, who is she's an archer, and she kills the shit out of things with her limit break. I have thought long and hard about this for about 10 years, and I really could not make a decision because there's so much cool stuff in both games, including even the grimness of Tactics Ogre. Like, there's... At some points, the grimness becomes fascinating to me. Like, there's a character... There's a family of necromancers that you run into. These are all NPCs. These are all villains. You kill one of them, because they're just the stage boss. Then you run into that character's fiancé. Then you run into the fiancé's, like, dad or their dad. So you end up wiping out this entire family one by one as they all try to do this revenge vendetta on you. It's like, well, if you guys didn't start this shit, I wouldn't have had to kill all of you. So who was the bad guy, really? Anyway.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of interesting that I don't think that would really fly today.
Well, I mean, I guess it does fly because it is in the game. Though it feels more like something you'd see in, like, Crusader Kings or something. We're like, oh, I killed this guy, so now I have to go and kill the entire rest of this kingdom because they're going to come at me.
No one's writing, like, think pieces about the moral baselessness of Crusader Kings or something. Or maybe somebody is, but I don't want to read them.
Yeah, I mean, I say it's like that because this is all scripted and pre-planned, so it's not like there's systems that are calculating this sort of thing, which would be extremely cool if there were. That's kind of like, that's the dream game. If I were ever a game designer, I would make something with the base action of Final Fantasy Tactics, but also the systems level of just weird story Legos that happen in Crusader Kings. We're like, yes, we're going on an adventure to save the world, but also I'm sleeping with my mother-in-law. You know, that kind of thing. I don't actually play Crusader Kings, I'm going to confess. I just love hearing about the things that happen in that game.
Like, I remember, like, you can take over all of Africa and just kill everyone. Or you can like coup the Pope. Or you can, I think you can summon
become
Satan.
the Pope, right?
Can you become the Pope?
You must be able to become the Pope. You can become the Pope in Hearts of Iron.
Okay. Let's see. Can you become the Pope?
There's definitely a way to become the Pope. I must have seen this. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're getting...
It sounds like it's not intended, but it is possible.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this is not an intended feature of the game, but it is possible. You can crown yourself the Pope.
Yeah. Imagine...
And that's what Final Fantasy Tactics. Instead of killing Cardinal Delacroix, you should be able to become the new Cardinal.
Or in Final Fantasy Tactics, instead of casually walking by the Pope's corpse after he gets murdered late in that game. And by that point, you're so disillusioned by society and how much it has failed you on every level, you don't care at all. Rams is just like, well, there's the Pope. He's dead. Fuck that guy. Moving on. I'm pretty sure the Pope dies in that game, doesn't he? Like, unsung,
I know,
too.
fucking... Yeah, Isolde or whatever his name is just walks up to him and stabs him, like, right in front of you, and Rams is just like...
Yeah, alright.
Nothing.
Well, every other level of society has been a disappointment and has proven to be utterly corrupt, so why not this one too? Whatever. Anyway, I finally was able to figure out why I like one of these games more than the other one, and it came because of this remake. What's happened in this remake is in Tactics Ogre Reborn, it's all fully voiced now. Like every character. And there's like hundreds of characters, so there's tons of voice actors, all of it fully voiced. You can replay the entire story now with acting, which is interesting. But I realized that I didn't actually want to see that. But if somebody were to release Final Fantasy Tactics with fully voiced acting, I would need to play that entire game again. And it is with that I realized that I actually love Final Fantasy Tactics more than Tactics Ogre.
That's a good answer.
That's a good argument.
I definitely see that because I don't. Yeah, Tactics. I mean, I think that's what I was trying to get at about like how Tactics Ogre, its grimness probably just wouldn't fly in a modern setting, or not in a modern setting, but like to modern audiences. There's some amount of detachment from these like little like spritey little Super Nintendo games.
Yeah, but it's also like story-wise too because of like the main trio. The main trio is Denim, Vice, and what's your sister's name? This is why like when we podcast at like 11 o'clock, I start forgetting names and I can't remember anymore.
I need to go to sleep very soon, but
Denim, Vice, and Denim's sister. When you look up Denim's sister, you get pictures of a lady in denim pants. Well done, great character name. Anyway, those three trio, like Denim is just like he's a player PC, so there's not much to him, and everything he does is just based on your decisions. Vice will betray you one way or the other. So if you go lawful, he's going to fight the other side. If you go chaos, he's going to go even more chaotic than you are. And like his character portrait will actually change, so by the end of that thing he is like this disheveled looking, like he just looks like a lunatic by the end of it. And your sister, she sucks as a character. Her plotline is terrible. And it's unsatisfying, it's bad writing, frankly. The way you save her is frustrating, and I don't want to spoil what happens there, but it's terrible. Versus Ramza and Delita. That's a great plot line. I love that. Where Ramza becomes basically an exile from society and Delita conquers all of Evilise. And by the end, he's left with nothing and nobody. And Ramza gets to maybe escape or maybe get exploded. But, you can see these two characters pass by each other. And also, they're extremely gay for each other. And there's stuff to bite into there. And also, everybody loves Agrias because she's Saber before there was Saber. That's just a lovable, likable character. And there just isn't somebody like that in Tactics Ogre. Sorry.
Tactics Ogre, I don't know if it was the first game that it had this trend of everything has to be law neutral. Okay, D&D invented this, but fucking every video game has to have a law route and a chaos route nowadays. And then every anime has to have Saber in it. These games invented our modern society.
Final Fantasy Tactics Ogre made our world.
Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't Homestuck made this world. Tactics Ogre made this world. All right. I think we've pushed ourselves to the limit here, and I think we've all concluded that Final Fantasy Tactics is ultimately the better game, or at least the game we love more.
Yeah.
What define better? These are both pristine, top tier, still untouched, almost 30 years later, juggernauts of the genre. And everything that's been made has been ultimately an imitation. And yes, there's an entire Western tradition of strategy games that's entirely different. And I can't really get into that. I just don't have the energy for it. And I think that's coming through in the recording at this point. So we should probably wrap this up. Is there anything else that we need to say?
Don't think so.
Oh yeah, Final Fantasy Tactics has chocobos, and chocobos are great.
But it has red chocobos and black chocobos, which are fucking bullshit.
Oh, the red chocobos are the force of Satan. Satan's Air Force. Dropping meteors on you.
And then they had to nerf them.
Really?
Yeah.
They are so... in Final Fantasy Tactics, you could be walking around, through the world, and then you get the random encounter that's, 7 red chocobos. You have to restart your game because you cannot beat them.
This is what modern games don't have. They don't just have RNG bullshit that decides that you just die. And that's disappointing.
Indie games do this. This is not really something that a AAA game will do anymore.
Yeah, no. AAA games are made by cowards. Anyways, I should actually go to sleep. It is pretty late.
Yeah, AAA games are made by cowards. I think that's a good place to end it. So I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all so much for listening and all the other things. Hopefully this episode actually gets posted this time, done properly. I'm going to be extremely careful about this. This is the Final Fantasy Wiki Podcast. And the podcast music, thank you so much for letting us use it, is La Montana de los Jovenes, Caballeros. I misread it, but whatever. It's by XPRTNovice off the OC remix Balance and Ruin. It's the Mount Koltz music from Final Fantasy VI Remade. We'll be back next month with a hopefully shorter episode all about Crisis Core. Thank you so much, everybody that's listening. Thank you for my co-hosts for continuing to press on even after I think we all kind of hit a wall, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
We started too late. Good night.